Hello. Welcome to the third board, my master's chess channel. I am Clipfish, your host. Here we will show you annotated games of great players of the past, and other chess-related content. Today's video is an instructive game between Alexander Alekhine and Frank Marshall, played in 1914, in St. Petersburg, then capital of the Russian Empire. But first, a brief introduction of these two players. Alexander Alekhine, as many of you know, defeated José Raúl Capablanca in a match in 1927, and became the third world champion. He was famous for his attacking skills, but also excelled in positional game. Frank Marshall was the United States champion from 1909 to 1936, and one of the strongest players in the world in the beginning of the 20th century. His greatest contribution to chess theory is probably the Marshall attack of the Ruy Lopez opening. Well, let's start the game. Alexander Alekhine has white and plays pawn to e4. Frank Marshall responds with pawn to e5. The game continues with knight to f3, knight to f6, and we have the Petrov defense. Knight takes on e5, d6, knight f3, knight takes on e4, d4, d5, bishop d3, bishop d6, c4, bishop b4 check, knight from b to d2, knight takes on d2. This exchange of knights is better for white. Instead of knight takes on d2, Alekhine recommends that black plays castles. And after castles, bishop takes knight, bishop takes bishop, bishop g4. Black position would be equal. The game continues with bishop takes on d2, queen e7 check, queen e2, queen takes queen check. Instead of queen takes queen right now, black could have played bishop takes on d2. And after king takes on d2, queen takes on e2 check, bishop takes on e2, d takes on c4, bishop takes on c4, castles. And, according to Alekhine, here black would have a position better than the one they had in the game. The game continues with king takes on e2, bishop takes on d2, king takes on d2, bishop e6. If, instead of bishop e6, Marshall played d takes on c4 here, then Alekhine could have played rook from h to e1 check, and after the black king moves, white would have a superior position. Back to the game. C takes on d5. Bishop takes on d5. Rook from h to e1 check. King d8. Bishop e4. Bishop takes on e4. In this position, black is forced to take the bishop on e4. If Marshall tries to defend it with c6, then white could play bishop takes on d5. And after pawn takes on d5, rook e5. White would capture the pawn on d5. The game continues with rook takes on e4, rook e8. This is another forced move for black. They cannot allow white to double rooks on the king file. The game continues with rook from a to e1. Rook takes on e4. Rook takes rook. Knight c6. Rook g4. This is the best move to capture a black pawn. If white plays knight g5 to capture the f7 or the h7 pawn, black would play king d7. And after knight takes on f7. Rook f8. Black would retake the pawn with counterattack. Back to the game. Marshall plays g6. Rook h4. King e7. This is the best move for black under these circumstances. If black played h5, trying to defend the h-pawn, white could respond with g4, and after h takes on g4, white would make a passed pawn easily. The game continues. Rook takes on h7. Rook d8. Rook h4. Defending the pawn. Rook d5. Rook e4 check. Black king is forced to retreat. If he advances to f6, then white could play king c3, defending the pawn on d4, and after that try to infiltrate the rook on e8, which would be dangerous for black. The game continues with king f8, king c3, rook f5, rook e2, a6, a3, knight e7, rook e5, rook f6. Black cannot allow the trade of rooks. Back to the game. King d3. Alekhine wants to move his rook to c5, but before that, he needs to protect the e-file. Black plays b6, not allowing the rook on c5. Rook e2. White changes his plan. Alekhine now wants to infiltrate his rook on the 7th rank, even if needs to sacrifice 1 or 2 pawns on the king side. The game continues with knight d5, king e4, knight f4, rook c2, knight takes on g2, knight e5. If white takes the c7 pawn now, black would play rook f4 check, and captures the knight. Black plays king e8, rook takes on c7, rook takes on f2, knight c4. Alekhine now wants to move his knight to b7, where it will protect the advance of the d4 pawn and guard the promotion square. The game continues with b5, knight d6 check, king f8, d5, f6, knight b7, knight f4, b4, g5, d6, knight e6, threatening the rook. King d5. The rook cannot be captured because after d takes on c7, rook c2, knight c5. Black cannot avoid the pawn's promotion. Back to the game. Knight f4 check, king c6, rook takes on h2, knight c5. To prevent black's knight on e6, where black could sacrifice it for the passed pawn. White wants the whole rook for the pawn. The game continues with rook d2, rook c8 check, king f7, d7, knight e6, knight takes on e6, king takes on e6, d8 promotes to queen, rook takes queen, rook takes rook, g4, rook e8 check, king f7, rook e2, f5, king d5, king f6, king d4, f4, king e4, king g5, rook f2, f3, rook d2, king h4, king f4. And, in this position, Frank Marshall resigned. Did you like this game? I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. I wish you good luck with your chess. Thank you and goodbye.